Good morning from Miss Sandra's. Today we're going to speak about verbs and the various tenses that we have to consider when we're using a verb. And just to kind of think about the verb to start with, a verb of course is an action word, a doing word. So something that we may do on an everyday basis or here and there is to walk, to run, to jump, to skip, to play. Of course, these are all verbs, okay? So once we've established what the verb is, there's various ways of using the verb depending on the time frame that we're speaking about. Are we speaking about now? Do we need to use the verb now? Or are we using the verb in conjunction with something from the past? Or are we using the verb for something that we're talking about in the future? And then of course there are a few variables for each of the present, past and future as well. So we're just going to look very briefly at verbs and how we can use them, but also how you can set yourself up to learn these verbs using what's available to you. So the first thing we have to do, of course, is like most things in the English language, we have a certain amount of rules, and then there are rules that go against the rules. So we have here with verbs, we have regular verbs, and with these regular verbs, the rule applies the same for each of them. And then we have irregular verbs, and with the irregular verbs, they have a different rule completely. Or a different, you know, what you do with them to make them past verbs is quite different to a regular verb. So first of all, what I would suggest is if you're going to start looking at these, is that you just download something that gives you the full list of tenses. Now, in some lists you look at will say 12. Some lists it's actually 16 is the full amount, but really we to start with need to look at, if we're looking at the past, we need to look perhaps at the simple past. Okay, so the verbs that are literally something that you're talking about that you did last week or you did it last month, okay, and it's just about being able to say to somebody, last week I, for example, played football, or last week I, for example, went racing. Okay, so being able to tell people about the verbs is this is the process that you can take. Okay, so first of all, you need to know whether it's regular or irregular. Okay, so there are various places on the internet that you can find such lists. I mean, I found this one really useful, and because it's color coded, it really helps my students. And here you've got a list of all the regular verbs. So with all of these verbs on this first page, of course, you simply put ed onto the word in order to make it the past tense. So today I play football. Yesterday I played football. So ed on the end. That's a regular verb, and that's quite straightforward. And if only they were all like that, I think English language learning would be far simpler. But we do have a huge list of irregular verbs, and the rules on these are very different from one to another. Okay, so what you need to do first is to establish, is it a regular verb or an irregular verb? And I've actually got some examples here that one of my students will do later, and so the first one that I have here is to shine. Okay, to shine, and when we're talking about shining, the past of that, okay, if we want to look at the past, we would go to our list, okay, and we will look, is it on our irregular list or is it in our regular list, and we'll find that it's an irregular verb. So we don't say shined, it shined, we would say it shone, S-H-O-N-E. Okay, so although today the sun is shining, the sun will shine, but if we look at the past, last week the sun shone, S-H-O-N-E. Just to look at a regular one, the verb whisper is a regular verb, and therefore if I want to speak to you about something that happened last week, I will say my friend whispered in my ear, okay? And that means that that's the past, that's not now, okay? It's in the past, is my friend whispered in my ear. So that's simply an ED, okay, for a regular verb. Let's take the verb taught, okay? Let's take the verb to teach, my apologies. The verb to teach is an irregular verb. Now, if it was regular, by putting it in the past, we would have said, he teached me, okay? And this would be a common mistake for somebody to make who was simply just learning English. But when we put the verb to teach into the past tense, it's actually taught, T-A-U-G-H-T. So quite different, really, to the word teach. So he taught me how to tie my shoelaces, okay, is the word taught, okay. Let's say, for example, the word bring. I bring coffee to work each day, okay. But if I want to say that I was doing the same thing last week with coffee, I would need to say I brought coffee to work last week, okay. So the word is an irregular verb, and therefore we have to look it on a list until you get familiar with them. They are really what we would call sight words then, where you will have to just become familiar with them as you go, because you know that there is no one rule that can help you with all of these verbs, okay. So a regular verb, you can add ed, okay. Irregular verbs have their own rules, and therefore your first action would be to ensure that you have something that tells you whether it's regular or irregular, and then something that shows you if it's irregular, what is the past tense, and then gradually start to use them. And I suggest if you have a sheet, you know, a fairly simple sheet like the one I have here, it will help you just come up with as many verbs as you can, and over time, you know, maybe do some each day, or every few days do a page of them, and then the first thing is, okay, the verb, is it regular or irregular, and whatever that may be, then put that into a sentence, okay, put it into a sentence, okay. So if I take the word, the verb to walk, I've used that here as an example. So to walk is a regular verb, so I'm going to be adding ed, and then I've put, he walked slower than a turtle, okay. So this idea of ed is put into practice there, okay. So that's what I would suggest, okay. A sheet, and just keep putting them into sentences, and ask somebody who's either a native English speaker or a good English speaker to just check them for you on a regular basis, and be sure that that sentence works, okay. It really is the only way to do it, is to keep practicing and practicing and practicing. And perhaps if you're speaking with people on a regular basis in English, ask them, you know, could you stop me, or could you interrupt me, or tell me if I say anything wrong, or if I say the verb in the incorrect way, so that you can actually be picked up on it. People won't automatically pick you up on that because they may feel that they're being rude, okay. But if you want them to, then ask them, and I'm sure they'll be happy to do so. It really is practice, practice, practice when it comes to learning a language anyway. But the irregular verbs in particular, Just need to practice them until they become, it will get to the stage where it sounds right or it doesn't sound right, and you'll know that you've actually got the correct one there. Okay. You know, beyond this, we can look at the other tenses. So we can look at the, you know, continuing tenses. You know, I am walking. Yeah, so something that's continuing on. And we can look at those at a later stage, but the most important to get right at the moment is the simple past. Okay, I walk, I did walk, or I walked. Okay, so in the past I walked, I jumped, ed, regular. Let's just think of some other particular. Yeah, with skip, there are just a couple actually that, whilst regular, they end in, say, something like a P. So the word skip, S-K-I-P. Okay, we do put the ed on the end to put that into the simple past. But before we do that, we have to add a second P. So it becomes S-K-I-P-P-E-D. Okay, but I think that's something, the sound is still the same, so I think that's something to worry about and think after establishing this routine for finding the past simple tense. Okay, I hope that's useful. If you have questions about that, then please, in any comments, I'm happy to answer in that respect. And please, if you can turn on your notifications when you subscribe to my channel, that will be really, really good, and we can keep any communication going. Okay, thank you very much.